Government spending, the legal addictive drug. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard as the Ainslie Group celebrates 50 years. Today, welcome back Alex, who's been highlighting the absurdity of how our tax dollars are being spent to juice up the economy at the same time as allegedly fighting the war on inflation, plus a few other provocative comments in there today. How are you going today, Alex?
I'm going well. How are you?
Very well. Now, you stopped me in my tracks. I had a little bit of a giggle with your line in the article today talking about cocaine and hookers. So obviously that's where we need to start. Powerful analogy talking about government spending and the ineffectiveness of it, really. But can you start us off by talking about or telling us what you were going for there?
Okay, so I was going for good time, not long time, but to put it in perspective, everyone now knows you go to a bank to get money out and they say $5,000, what are you going to do with it? If you were to say cocaine and hookers, probably the bank would say, no, we're not going to give you the money. That's where the nanny state of Australia has gotten to, that a bank gets to say what you're going to spend your money on. And yet the government just keeps on going with what they're doing, and everything they're spending at the moment is a good time, not a long time. And the data, and that's been going on for 20 years, and the data is just getting worse and worse. And if this continues, Australia's in a pretty dire situation.
And you certainly showed some of that in the charts and things that you're putting in there today. Australia, front and center, it's not great. And you've highlighted this before, but you've particularly narrowed in on it today about the red tape. It's a significant concern, the regulations, the impact it has on entrepreneurship and competition. Do you think that, I mean, you've mentioned this before, you feel it's one of the most crippling parts of what's really creating the problem here in Australia. Can you maybe talk about that and how it's specifically stifling innovation and economic growth?
Well, I mean, in 2004, we were ranked number one for economic competitiveness as a country. We're now number 19 out of 64. It's not dire, but I got to say the leading indicators are starting to say things are not looking great. So now for economic competitiveness, we're number 19 for best sort of place to do business. So for economic competitiveness now we're 52 of 64, and for entrepreneurship, we're at 62 out of 64. No one's starting anything. Everyone is looking at people who run businesses and thinking too hard. And I can tell you, I mean, I've got a lot of entrepreneur friends. You ask them, would you do it again? Most of them would say no. Like, it is the amount of red tape and hoop jumping that you're forced to do, especially as a small to medium business. You've got to keep up with these big businesses that can have whole departments looking after what the government's asking you to do from 30 different government departments. And small and medium businesses just cannot keep up, and people are just giving up the dream of being an entrepreneur. And it is a rewarding career, but not if it's too hard. And I just think that's really starting to come home to roost. You look at say manufacturing in Australia, where you need robotics now to compete with overseas industries and things like that. Manufacturing has innovated over the last 20, 30 years, and what's left of it is more competitive. But then you look at just the makeup of the workforce in Australia. In 1984, 5.9% of the workforce was public compliance and safety. So they're usually government jobs, and let's be honest, probably mostly regulation jobs. Now it's 6.6%. Why have they not innovated? Why have the number of people in compliance in Australia gone up over 40 years? It makes no sense. There's IT systems, there's the ability to work from home. There's been innovation that computers came in the middle, and we've still got the same
that little thing. Yep.
That little thing that kind of made things a little bit better, the internet, and we've gone up, not down.
And that's part of the issue that I have generally, this idea that you've got things that should have improved everything that actually somehow making it worse. And that leads me to another aspect. It's a different part of it, but I think it somehow links, which is this idea of government policies versus the RBA's tools, because you seem to have the Reserve Bank trying to control what's going on in the economy with ineffective tools, if we're going to talk about
With
that.
a tool. A tool,
with a
nothing else.
single tool that is ineffective,
Yeah.
yet policies that like are increasing regulation and red tape, all the things that you just mentioned. How do you put those two things together? Because it seems that we get the message about how we solve the problem is completely unrelated to what you're identifying as the actual underlying problems that exist here.
Yeah, once again, that probably what got me started on my rant was once again, another central bank came out and said, here is our blunt tool, and we are going to continue with our blunt tool thumping down inflation. However, we have a tool, implied that there's other places, the government, with the tools. Now, red tape, government spending, just innovation that they can apply, infrastructure. There's so many things that can be built to grow an economy and to help an economy, and to cool an economy. If inflation's high, government spending shouldn't be high. But once again, the RBA came out and said, here's our blunt object, but government, look here. One thing we're just not talking about, and I was speaking to my brother in America the other day, and he said to me, they've just got to get rid of regulation here and things will be better. It's the same here. Every country in the world just keeps increasing regulation and it keeps decreasing competitiveness. And there's got to be ways at least to innovate it. If they want to keep it the same level that people have to do it, then at least let there be some innovations where 3 government departments aren't asking you for the same bloody information over and over again, not talking with competing agendas that, to be perfectly honest, sometimes leave businesses doing the right thing for one government department and the wrong thing for another government department. It is insane. And to me, it is probably the biggest driver of inflation. They're definitely talking about the lack of housing now. The government's got the 1.2 million mandate that have to be done in the next 10 years. Ask anyone in construction right now, what are you doing? Sitting on it, because it's now another $100,000 in fees from the government to build something. So everyone's just sitting on their hands and stopping because the government has told people what they need to do and then added cost and compliance and fees and levies, and no one wants to do it.
And do you think that links, because you mentioned specifically an area that I wanted to just explore a little bit, which was education and health, right? You mentioned those in there as areas that were particularly being affected by this bureaucracy, productivity, job satisfaction, those things. Is that part of the same thing that you were just talking about, where people just don't want to do those jobs anymore because they've just become too bureaucratic, too away from why people were attracted to them in the first place? Is that the link?
Well, I mean, I've chose teaching, and it's a beautiful profession, but I mean, you can speak to this more than me, but I speak to my teacher friends and relatives, and they just tell me that they are spending less and less time teaching, which is what they were trained to do, and more time box ticking. Now, I remember when I was growing up, you'd have teachers that loved to teach, and they loved to teach kids that were different and maybe smart in a different way to get the most out of them. Teachers are now told to teach in a certain way. They're told that they've got to tick this box and that box. They're, spending more and more time out of the classroom. We have teacher shortages. And this is the industry the government is running. So this is their bureaucracy. So I guess the point of the article is, why are we trusting the government to run, they run education and health, and I appreciate and understand that. But then they're trying to run businesses in the same way and just adding bureaucracy and compliance. So in 2019, 26% of teachers said that it was not long-term what they wanted to do. By 2022, it was 35%. 35% of people that go to university to teach and think it's a wonderful career are burning out. They've had it.
And I mean, I will jump on the bandwagon there, because it is an area that I'm really passionate about. Part of the problem, as I see it, is you've got which really ties together a lot of what you said today. You've actually got better tools available. Like you look at AI and that, the chat GPT stuff, tools that could actually be used to assist in reducing workload. But what does the government do? Often the first thing they do is block access to these tools. So, you might be in a classroom where you simply can't access the tools that would make your life easier because they're just shrouded in bureaucracy and red tape. That doesn't encourage anyone to want to, to go into that profession, because ultimately that's not what they were there for. They weren't there to do all that red tape stuff. They were there to do the on the ground things that they considered valuable. So yeah, I think it does tie together quite nicely.
And this is the government just has red tape, compliance over everything. Even look at the way economies are now run. Everything is measured, and they steer the economies in such a way so we don't hit recession. And yet we're in GDP per capita recession. So they pump migration. Everything is measured to hide what's actually going on. And unfortunately, I think right now, the unhappiness that's going on, like people are stressed,
Yes.
people are unhappy. The numbers are still looking rosy. I mean, Australia's looks okay. America looks amazing, but speak to anyone there and that is not the
They
case.
don't feel like it, yeah.
But no one feels like it. So, I really think there's a real breakdown and lack of trust now for governments, because everyone's been fed too many furphies and everything feels different. And sometimes you just got to know, if it feels wrong, it is wrong.
I think that's a great way to sum it up. Look, that was a fantastic little rant session for both of us, I think, to get a few of those things off our chest. But always appreciate your work on that, Alex, and a great article today. Lots of really useful stuff to look at from the Australian context. So thank you for that.
Just fun to be able to rant sometimes.
It is good. It is fun. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll chat again soon.